So the first of this season's Heineken Cup semi-finals will take place at Dublin's Aviva Stadium this coming Saturday between Ulster and Edinburgh. Both teams staged arguably upset wins in the quarter-final, with Edinburgh ousting four times champions Toulouse, with Ulster storming Munster's Fortress Thomond and coming away with a very impressive 23 points to 19 win. So this game is going to be decided by a number of particular factors, chief amongst which could very well be who is absent. Ulster will be missing John Afoa for on account of suspension, owing to a tip tackle on Munster's Felix Jones in the quarter-final. He'll be serving out the third of a 4-week suspension. This will mean that Declan Fitzpatrick is likely to deputise for the New Zealand international prop in the front row, and this is an area that Edinburgh are likely to target. Now, on what's almost certainly going to be a wet day in Dublin with a greasy ball, you may expect that the visitors, who are of course the underdogs, would try to slow the game down, try to frustrate Ulster, but then again that really isn't their style of play under coach Michael Bradley. More likely is that they'll try to spread the ball wide to the likes of Tim Visser and really try to stage another smash and grab effort. Number 10, Greg Laidlaw, could well be key to their success. His opposite number, Ian Humphreys, had arguably his best game for Ulster against Munster in the quarter-final. Likewise, scrum half Ruben Pienaar looks a very tidy acquisition from South Africa. The rest of the South African contingent, it'll be interesting to see how they get on, particularly Pedri Vandenberg at 8, who is departing Ulster at the end of the season. He'll be looking to move on with a bit of a bang. Likewise, coach Brian McLaughlin, who is being ousted and replaced by former New Zealand under-20 coach Gareth Anscombe. It is being seen in some quarters as a potentially misguided move on the part of Ulster, and particularly the IRFU, to move Brian McLaughlin on, particularly given the fact that he has only recently finished up a leave of absence from his teaching position to move into rugby coaching full time. It may well be the case that his loss is somebody else's gain within the game. By way of a formal prediction, I think Ulster are more likely to edge it in the tight exchanges in the pack, and I think their strike runners out wide, the likes of Andrew Trimble, Darren Cave, and particularly Stefan Terblanche, could well prove the difference. Ahead on the chopping block, I'm going to have to give it to Ulster by 6 or 7 points, but expect Edinburgh to make no great disgrace of themselves. Moving on then to Bordeaux Stade Chaban Delmas for Sunday's game between Clermont and Leinster. Thanks to the miracle of chroma key, as you can see, I've just flown over to Bordeaux. It's not quite a home game for Clermont. Unfortunately, this has been moved 300 miles away from the Auvergne to Bordeaux, largely because they cannot play the fixture in their own home stadium and it does not meet capacity requirements. This makes Leinster's task a little bit easier, moving away from home, or moving away from a venue where Clermont have not been beaten this season or indeed last season. The crowd should be slightly less hostile, and indeed there should be a bit more blue in the crowd than might otherwise be the case. The travelling support is being bolstered by none other than Leinster's beloved mascot Leo the Lion, who doesn't very often go to away matches but is making the trip to France for this one. As regards the others making the trip, Leinster have effectively a full choice team to pick from. The teams have not yet been named, so we're somewhat limited in terms of the speculation that we can make, although it is likely that a front row of Healy, Strauss and Ross will be packing down against a very combative Clermont front row. Regardless of who they pick in the front row, whether it's David Sirakashvili or indeed the South African Daniel Coetzee, expect them to attack Cian Healy in the tight. The second rows largely cancel one another out, with Leinster's Leo Cullen and Brad Thorne likely to come up against former Leinster man Nathan Hines in the line-out, who will no doubt bring a lot of insider knowledge to proceedings. The back rows, it's going to be really pick any one of 8 into 3 positions for Clermont, whereas for Leinster you can probably expect Sean O'Brien, Jamie Heaslip and Shane Jennings to start the game, with due relief to come later on. As regards to halfbacks, I think Owen Redden and Jonathan Sexton largely picked themselves, and they'll be playing opposite Morgan Parra and Brock James. Brock James, of course, who has previous against Leinster, having largely bottled it in the RDS in 2010 in the quarter-final, which Clermont lost 29 points to 28. He'll no doubt have a score to settle, and in the absence of the injured David Scrella, he will almost certainly start. Out wide, both teams have significant strengths. Clermont have a very, very large backline with Wesley Fofana, Aurelien Rougerie and Julian Malzio to complement the likes of Brock James and Regan King, who spent significant time in Wales. That'll be the significant challenge for Leinster, to shackle these particularly big power runners. The likes of Brian Driscoll, Gordon Darcy should have no real trouble, given the fact that they are accomplished tacklers, but perhaps maybe out wide Luke Fitzgerald may be somewhat suspect, although Isan Esteo's assuredness under the high ball should more than compensate for that. In terms of a prediction, I think away from home Leinster are up against it. It's backs to the wall, but I think whoever does get through this semi-final will go on to win the Heineken Cup. The fact that it's being played in London should give no team a particular incentive to win it, because it simply won't be played in their home country. Likewise, it doesn't give any team a particular advantage. Off the top, to put my head in the chopping block again and to give a prediction, I'm going to have to say Claremont to shade it by 2, purely because the game is away from home in a stadium that holds a lot of bad memories for the Irish contingent, particularly those who would have been involved in the 2007 World Cup, the Stade Chaban Delmas having hosted the debacles against Georgia and Namibia, and to a lesser extent the warm-up game against France before last season's World Cup.